Alright guys, today we're looking at the Logitech G303 Shroud Edition. So what is this mouse all about? Well, the first thing you'll probably notice with this mouse is just how unique the shape is. And you guys, it is a very, very unique shape, and that could be good or bad depending on your hand style. So what I noticed with this mouse is that it really kind of forces you to hold it at the front, like your fingertips really have to kind of grip the front of it. But then, when you do that, you kind of have this heavy bulk in the back of your hand that you have to sort of drag around a little bit. So just to kind of illustrate what I mean here. So here's the mouse. Now I grab it with the palm, and then the tips of my fingers sort of have to make contact with the mouse at the very front. And that's kind of the only way you can really hold this comfortably. If you try to hold it more in like a fingertip grip, kind of like this, then it becomes difficult to click the buttons because the amount of force required to actuate the click is more toward the back of the mouse button versus the front of the mouse button. So just to illustrate this, if I hold it like this, which is more like a claw grip, notice that my index finger is making contact with the mouse button toward the back, which makes it more difficult to click in. You really get the sense that this mouse wants to be held more like this. See the difference? So this is claw grip, right? And then this is, I think, how the mouse wants to be held. Now it's much easier to push that click button, but the problem is then you sort of have all this weight back here that you sort of have to drag around. Now, if you're a palm grip style person, that's probably okay, but if you like to do a claw grip or fingertip grip, this just kind of doesn't work, because if you move your hand like this everywhere, then it's a little bit easier, but I like to sort of plant my wrist and then just move the mouse with my fingers like that and keep my wrist planted. Now the problem with this mouse in doing that is that as I mentioned, you have all this backspace to sort of deal with, which gets in the way. So my hand's covering the mouse now, so you can't really tell, but when I start moving it around like this, I feel like I sort of have to change my hand position every time I move the mouse to hold it comfortably. Or even just to actuate that click button. Like if I hold it out here, you can see my index finger is fully extended. It's difficult to click that left click. So then I sort of have to like drag it in, pull the mouse in such that my index finger makes contact at the front. So, just to illustrate this again, it's like move it there, but then I gotta pull it in like this to click that button. The point is, the mouse is just a very, very awkward shape, and I think for most people, I don't even know who would want this, honestly. I mean, I guess if you have maybe, I don't know, really big hands, you could get away with claw gripping this, but I'm 6'1", and my hands are probably pretty big, just comparatively, so if it's not good for me, it's hard to know who this would be good for. But anyway, that's kind of what I noticed with this mouse. It's really hard to get a comfortable grip on this thing in a way that is convenient for actually clicking that button, because as I mentioned, you really want to click this mouse at the front of the left click button, and so that requires just a very, very specific, it really locks your hand into a certain grip. Other modern mice nowadays have a little bit more of a neutral shape, like this is the new G309. I also have a review on this if you want to check that out, but this is just a more neutral grip. Same with the Logitech G Pro Superlight 2. Again, just a more neutral grip. So that's just the main thing with this mouse is going to be just the grip style. I think is very, very awkward. But otherwise, the other thing that I always look at when checking out a new mouse is, of course, the quality of the skates, because the quality of the skates can make a light mouse feel very heavy, and it can make a heavy mouse feel lighter. This mouse comes in at about 75 grams, but the quality of the skates is actually very good in my opinion. And so it ends up feeling not super heavy. In fact, in some ways it feels more easier to drag on the mouse pad than the G Pro Superlight 2, which these are on the G Pro Superlight 2, the skates on this mouse are probably some of the worst I've ever used. So I really hate those skates. They look similar, but they are different, and these just glide around much, much more easily. Okay, a couple other things. Side buttons. These are very good. They don't stick to your thumb, so I'm clicking and dragging away with my finger. There's some rattling, but I'm really kind of forcing that, you guys. It doesn't really, if you just click it normally, there really is no rattling. Speaking of rattling, rattle test. It's basically non-existent. It's a very, very solid feeling mouse. Scroll wheel, so that's another point of contact in the mouse, obviously. This definitely feels like a dated scroll wheel. Just the design feels more akin to like the really old like G304s from the old days, or even some of the mice older than that. It doesn't have like that new grippy texture that the new mice have, like the Logitech G Pro X Superlight. You can kind of see it has that like individuated grippy texture there. Same with the G309. That has a similar texture as well. And just the scrolling just feels a little bit more solid in these new mice. The scrolling on this mouse, you can kind of hear it rattle, right? Whereas it doesn't happen on the newer ones. I don't know if that comes through on camera, but when I swirl this wheel, the whole mouse kind of like vibrates a little bit. And then of course the clicks themselves, if you grip the mouse at the very front, like I mentioned, they actually feel very, very good. The mouse isn't too loud either. Here's a click test. So I really miss these clicks because the newer mice like the G Pro X Superlight, the clicks are horrible. They're so incredibly loud, and they are super difficult to actuate. It takes a lot of force to actually push the button down. You could not use this in an office environment. I'm telling you guys right now, this is not going to work in an office environment. It's just way too loud. This one you could probably use in an office environment. So anyway, what else? The back, there is this little thing everyone always makes fun of. The butt of the mouse has the storage for the USB dongle, you know, which is fine. This seems like extra weight they didn't really need, but I don't know. Who really travels with their mice? I don't know. It just sits on my desk. I don't travel with it, but I guess some people do. Anyway, yeah, no latency at all. You guys, sensors these days are really, really good. Even in the older mice like this, they are just really, really flawless. So no complaints there. The one thing you will notice if you plug this into the software and you open up the Logitech G Hub software, you will notice the UI for this mouse is a little bit outdated. It's the old design, more or less. They're not using a new UI with this mouse when you plug it in. Whereas if you compare this to like the G Pro Superlight, this uses the new modern UI. It's still good, honestly. I don't know why people complain about the G Pro software. It's honestly probably the best software for a mouse I've ever used. So I don't see what the big deal is with, I don't know why it gets so much crap online. I think it is the most intuitive personally. All right guys, well, should you buy this mouse? Well, if you're the kind of person that has tried the shape of many different mice, like for example, the G Pro X Superlight or the G309, and you just don't feel like you can get a good grip on those mice, then maybe you want to try something unique and different like the G303. But if you typically find that you get along well with more traditionally shaped mice, then I would say this G303 is probably not going to suit you. It doesn't suit me. Personally, I don't really know who this would suit. I mean, it's kind of fun to use for like a day or two, but beyond that, I find myself just wanting so badly to get back to my other mice because this one gets really uncomfortable, and I guess awkward is the more appropriate word. It gets more awkward to use after extended periods of time. So ultimately, I probably would not recommend it for most people, but like I say, if you have trouble with more traditional mice, then it might be a good pick. Thanks for watching.